You want the whole story raw and real, no filter like a late-night confession over strong coffee. So here goes. Arrest him immediately. He's trespassing on marina property that belongs to the Clearwater Shores community. That was the first thing I heard on my so-called fresh start morning. Some woman's voice slicing through the air like a chainsaw at 7 a.m., full of fake authority and old money entitlement. I hadn't even finished unloading my kitchen boxes before 3 police cruisers showed up, sirens still echoing across the lake. Imagine you're standing in your own driveway boxes in your arms your entire life in a moving truck behind you. Then suddenly half your new neighborhood emerges, phones up, hungry for drama. That's how my story began, and trust me, it only got wilder from there. Name's Maverick Stone, maritime engineer 35, no stranger to bureaucratic headaches. I've negotiated with South American port thugs, outsmarted harbor masters in the Mediterranean, danced with enough red tape to mummify a cargo ship. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for Cordelia Ashworth. She was standing there pointing at me like I was a war criminal clutching this pearl-handled briefcase that probably cost more than my truck platinum hair teased into a helmet cream blazer immaculate. There were 6 cops that morning, all with the look of men who'd been dragged into Cordelia's circus before. "Ma'am, can you explain the nature of the complaint?" That was Officer Richardson, who, bless him, sounded exactly like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Cordelia snapped open her briefcase with all the subtlety of a soap opera villain, yanked out some official-looking document, and announced Emergency HOA Resolution 847. She waved it around like the Declaration of Independence and declared I was illegally occupying marina property. My property, mind you. Now, one thing I learned dealing with crooked officials overseas: always document everything. I set my box down, pulled out my phone, started recording. "Officer, my name's Maverick Stone. I bought this place at a federal auction 3 weeks ago. All the paperwork's in my truck." When I said federal auction, Cordelia's face twitched, just a flicker, but I caught it. She knew I'd stumbled into something big. Officer Richardson wanted to see the documents, so I grabbed them. Waterproof case, always ready, and there it was in black and white, not just the lake house, but a 47-slip marina. That marina made $200,000 a year in slip fees. If Cordelia had been collecting on that as community property, someone was raking in a small fortune. Cordelia's voice wobbled. "That's impossible. The marina has been community property since 1987. We've collected fees for maintenance for decades." She looked ready to faint, but instead she tried to double down like all good villains do. "If you've ever had someone try to steal what's yours," I said to the crowd, "you know what this feels like." Officer Richardson went through my documents, slow and careful. "Sir, these appear to be legitimate federal documents. Ma'am, do you have proof of HOA ownership?" Cordelia snapped open her briefcase again, but this time her hands were shaking. She started ranting about decades of precedent, $50 monthly lake access fees, and hundreds of thousands spent on community improvements. Quick math, 340 homes at $50 a month. That's over $1.6 million in fees, not even counting the marina. I told the officer I'd like to see those records because according to this deed, the marina was never HOA property. That's when Captain Elena Farweather stepped in, a real-life harbor master Coast Guard veteran, someone who didn't scare easy. She eyed Cordelia and said, "We've discussed complaints about unauthorized charges before." Cordelia started shrieking about how every fee was authorized, but Captain Farweather had receipts, literally. "You've been charging boat owners $50 for access and then slip fees to your own consulting company. Some folks pay twice." The crowd was catching on. Cordelia was double-dipping, charging people for a marina she didn't even own. Officer Richardson started taking notes. This was no longer a petty dispute. It was looking like full-on fraud. "Mrs. Ashworth, do you own Ashworth Marine Consulting?" Cordelia tried to look offended, but the cracks were showing. "We provide professional services." "For a marina you don't own," I cut in. Captain Farweather estimated the scam at $400,000 to $500,000 over 5 years. Some boat owners were paying $3,000 a year in combined fees. The neighborhood was buzzing, people whispering and shaking their heads. Officer Richardson's radio squawked dispatch was requesting updates, probably smelling the stench of a bigger crime. I had another ace up my sleeve, the original deed from 1893 showing the marina had always been private, never HOA. It was seized in a federal corruption case, I said. The prior owner, Vincent Ashworth, was convicted of marina fraud, sentenced to 8 years. The silence after that was heavy. Cordelia finally muttered, "Vincent was my business partner, but I just kept things running to protect the community." Right. By collecting fees you had no right to and threatening folks who couldn't pay. Captain Farweather called it. "If you've been mailing out fraudulent bills, that's federal mail fraud." Cordelia went white, stumbled back, and nearly dropped her fancy briefcase. "I need to call my attorney. That's probably wise," Officer Richardson told her, "but I'll need all records for an audit." Just then, a tiny silver-haired woman stepped up, Betty Clearwater, tougher than any steel worker, carrying a folder like it was a sword. "Officer, I want to file a complaint. Mrs. Ashworth has stolen $8,000 from me over 3 years, dock fees, violations, assessments that never existed. More neighbors came forward, folders canceled checks, angry voices. The dam was breaking." Cordelia still tried to play victim. Everything was voluntary contributions, she whined. But Captain Farweather had 12 formal complaints, threatening letters from collection agencies. This was a racket, plain and simple. "That's systematic fraud," she said. I did the math on my phone. If Cordelia skimmed even $2.3 million in fake fees, that was organized crime territory. Officer Richardson finally said, "Mrs. Ashworth, you need to come to the station. This isn't a property dispute anymore. It's massive organized fraud." That's when Cordelia panicked and turned on me. "This man's a dangerous veteran. He's threatened elderly residents. Classic move when you're caught, attack the whistleblower." I laughed. "Ma'am, I've been here 4 hours. Only threats have come from you." Cordelia couldn't produce a single witness, but her lies were now live on a dozen neighbors' phones, evidence of her desperation. Officer Richardson read her rights. When the cuffs went on, Cordelia's briefcase popped open, spilling a whole deck of pre-printed emergency resolutions for every scenario. Turns out her family was the entire HOA board, her husband, the city commissioner, her sister-in-law, the legal counsel. They'd built a whole empire on fake authority. As the crowd realized they'd been scammed by one family, an avalanche of complaints poured in. Betty again. Without a real board quorum, none of those fees were ever valid. Captain Farweather warned me. Some victims might try to sue you thinking you're responsible. Great. So now I had to lawyer up just to enjoy my own house. When I finally asked, "Can I start moving in?" Officer Richardson said, "As soon as we finish photographing evidence." The community was still reeling when that afternoon Captain Farweather brought even bigger news. Cordelia ran 4 shell companies, each billing for different bogus services: property management, fake dock repairs, patrol boats, environmental assessments. The total theft might hit $5 million. And Vincent, the guy who went to prison, Cordelia's brother-in-law, she'd simply inherited the scam and expanded it. I realized then Cordelia had been monitoring federal auctions. She'd been ready for this showdown for weeks, planning every move. If I'd given up, she'd have bought my place at a discount and kept milking the community for decades. Then the threat started, texts from burner numbers. "Drop the investigation, or else." Captain Farweather leveled with me. "It's going to get uglier before it gets better. Cordelia won't go down without a fight." She'd already devastated at least 40 families, targeting elderly folks who couldn't fight back. Still, I wasn't about to walk away. And neither was Captain Farweather. The next morning, Cordelia taped a fake restraining order to my door, signed by her husband's brother, the local judge. By 8 a.m., bogus security boats were circling my marina. Process servers were dumping $15,000 in fake citations on my porch. Cordelia was going full scorched earth, and the psychological warfare was brutal. Neighbors giving me side-eye news crews parking across the street, my clients calling to drop contracts thanks to a viral social media video where Cordelia staged a fall, claimed I shoved her, and painted me as a monster. But here's the twist. She didn't see coming. Marina security cameras, 12 angles audio, the whole setup. You see Cordelia approach position herself, whisper to her accomplice. Make sure you get the fall, not the setup. Then she throws herself backwards into the lake and wails for help while her phone streams the scene. I handed it all to Captain Farweather, who coordinated with the feds because by now the FBI was involved. Turns out my property purchase had triggered their investigation into the Ashworth Network multi-state fraud, wire fraud, racketeering. When Captain Farweather held a press conference, played the footage, and announced the FBI's case, well, Cordelia's career ended right there. The mayor stepped in, dissolved the HOA, froze all assets, fired the city commissioner, and called for a federal probe of the judge. The crowd erupted, neighbors hugging, crying, finally free of Cordelia's grip. 17 arrests followed, $12 million in stolen assets, recovered, every victim repaid with interest, and Cordelia, 25 years in federal prison. My marina turned into a real community hub, slip rentals dropped to $5. Families flocked back, property values soared. My business took off. Congress even passed new federal laws, the Ashworth Prevention Act mandating HOA transparency and protecting elderly property owners. You want to know the real secret to fighting organized corruption? Document everything, demand proof, never back down. Cordelia counted on intimidation, but when that failed, her empire collapsed just like that. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been targeted by fake authority? Had your reputation dragged through the mud by someone desperate to hold on to power? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk justice. Real justice, the kind that comes when regular people stand up, document the truth, and say, enough is enough. And if you want more wild stories about taking down the worst HOAs in America, hit subscribe. Because next week I'm telling you about a therapy garden that turned into evidence in the wildest federal takedown you've ever heard. Sometimes revenge really does bloom where you least expect it.